Mother, Any Distance Greater Than a Single Span, by Simon Armitage, was published in 1993 in his collection Book of Matches. It makes up part of a series of 30 autobiographical sonnets. The ideas for these sonnets came from a party game where each player would have to recount an episode from their life in the 20 seconds that it takes a match to burn out from the moment of its being struck. Each sonnet has, therefore, been crafted so as to take no longer than 20 seconds to read. The poem's original layout includes an asterisk above the first line, missing from the AQA anthology, to symbolise the striking of the match. The sonnet is a poetic form that traditionally has strict conventions relating to its number of lines, 14, its rhyme scheme, e.g. 3 quatrains with alternating rhymes and then a rhyming couplet at the end, for a Shakespearean sonnet, and metre, or rhythmical pattern, i.e. a 10-syllable line in iambic pentameter, di-dum, 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 di-dum. Poets have, however, experimented with the form over the centuries since its invention in Sicily 800 years ago, and Simon Armitage is no exception. We will see that his sonnet has 15 lines and no formal rhyme scheme, although he uses different types of rhyme to create cohesion. The poem has no fixed metre and is a mix of trochees, dumdy, and iambs, di-dum, which, because of the irregular line lengths of between 3 and 16 syllables, actually leads to a fairly regular double-beat rhythm. For example, if a line ends on an unstressed syllable, the next line usually starts with a stressed syllable, and vice versa, to maintain the regular rhythm. Another interesting point about the structure of the poem is that it is almost completely asyndetic. There is not one single use of the word and in the poem. Sentences contain instead multiple clauses and phrases linked by commas. This gives the poem momentum and mimics the continual unwinding of the tape measure as the poet moves further and further away. The one conjunction or appears in the poem's final line and emphasises the difference between the two possible futures that await him. The poem is known by its rather long first line, Mother, Any Distance Greater Than a Single Span. This is commonly abbreviated to Mother, Any Distance, as in the AQA anthology, and it is tempting to analyse the title in this light with its suggestion that a mother is always a mother, and that the bond between her and her child transcends both physical and temporal distance. Although this reading of the poem can be justified, and that his mother tries to hang on to the bond between them, embodied in the tape measure, over both time and distance, this may not have been what the poet originally intended, as he himself, in a reading of the poem available on YouTube, does not give it this abbreviated title, but rather refers to it as being an untitled sonnet. This analysis should, therefore, be made with caution. The poem tells of an episode relating to leaving home, an event commonly seen as a rite of passage. The poet is moving into a rented house just down the street from his family home, and his mother, brandishing a tape measure, follows him there. Together they take measurements in the house, holding on to an end of the tape each. As the poet moves through and up the house into the loft to look out of a skylight in the roof, his mother continues to hold on to her end of the tape for dear life. As the poem progresses, the tape measure becomes an extended metaphor for the emotional bond, sometimes referred to as the umbilical cord, itself a metaphor, that connects a mother to her child over both time and distance. The implication, although a slightly ambiguous one, in the final stanza is that his mother may end up losing her grip, suggesting that this is the moment the poet breaks free to stand on his own 2 feet. The poem begins with the lines, Mother, any distance greater than a single span requires a second pair of hands. The word mother here is an example of an apostrophe, a technique where a speaker directly addresses someone or something who is not present or which cannot respond in reality. With this statement, he is, on one level, letting her know that in a practical task, any distance greater than that which one person can reach by themselves, the distance between one outstretched hand and the other, requires the assistance of another person. His use of a synecdoche in the second line, effectively reducing his mother to a pair of hands, perhaps symbolises her defining role in his life, which has been to support him. And the support she is giving him now is as he moves away from dependence, always being within arm's reach, to independence. The fact that he uses approximate rhyme, i.e. span and hands, rather than perfect rhyme, enhances the idea that the two of them are no longer a complete unit, as they once were, and that they are beginning to diverge from one another. The items they begin to measure, the windows, pelmets, doors, are initially very mundane, although as the list continues on to the next line, he goes off on a poetic flight of fancy, using hyperbolic metaphor, the acres of the walls, the prairies of the floors. This technique, in conjunction with asyndeton, not only suggests that he finds the prospect of moving out daunting, as the images evoke never-ending and increasingly expansive areas, but simultaneously that it is an exciting adventure. Prairies are large open grasslands in North America and are associated with the lawless frontier where pioneers and settlers arrived in the 19th century to stake their claim on virgin soil. There is an implication that this first step into independence is a gateway to the exploration of exciting and perhaps lawless new worlds. The second stanza begins with you at the zero end. Literally, she is holding on to the end of the tape measure where the zero is, while he unwinds the tape to take the measurement. Metaphorically, she has been there, connected to him for the whole of his life, from year zero. The poet briefly reverts to the mundane once more, while he is recording length, reporting meters, centimeters back to base. His use of a metaphor to describe the way he gives his mother the measurements as reporting them back to base suggests that she symbolises security to him, but that she also is in a position of authority. Not only is she something to go back to, but she is also above him in the chain of command. He then leaves up the stairs, a significant moment as he ventures even greater distances away from her. Armitage fully establishes the metaphor of the tape measure as a measurement of the passing of time, with the image of it unreeling years between us. The numbers on the tape no longer relate to meters and centimeters, but to the years that have gone by as he has grown up. Lines 5, 6 and 7 are linked through weak or unaccented rhyme, both at the end of lines and internally, in the words recording, reporting, leaving, feeding, and unreeling. Note also the assonance with the or sound in recording and reporting, as well as with the e sound in leaving, feeding, and unreeling, in conjunction with the extensive use of the present participle, enjambment, and asyndeton. At this point in the stanza, these techniques combine to not only give the poem a sense of cohesion, but also a forward movement, reflecting the idea of the poet moving away from his mother. Line 5 breaks the regular rhythmic pattern that Armitage has established. You at the zero end, me with a spool of tape, recording. Dum-dee, dee-dum, dee-dum, dum-dee, dee-dum, dee-dum, dee-dum-dee. As you can see, in the same line there are two instances where Armitage has substituted a trochee when an iamb would have maintained the rhythm. This results in the words you and me both falling on a stressed syllable, which puts emphasis on these words. This stress highlights the positioning of mother and son at each end of the tape, and perhaps communicates the unspoken defiance that each one has in staking their claim. Armitage uses two single-word minor sentences, anchor, kite, to finish the stanza. The metaphor of an anchor to describe his mother evokes security, stability, and steadiness, but at the same time, containment and restriction. The metaphor of a kite to describe him suggests that he has the ability to fly, but only as far as his mother will let him. The time has come when his mother's steadying influence and provision of safety is no longer required or desired, and has instead become restrictive. The separation of the two words by a full stop, and the pause that is needed, makes the tension between them almost palpable, as one holds on and the other tugs to pull away. As he reaches the upper floor, the metaphor changes as he spacewalks through the empty bedrooms, which perhaps symbolise a future that is yet to be filled. Again, there is a sense of adventure evoked in the image of outer space, as his mother is now even further away, and there is also a suggestion of a lack of gravity or pull. Perhaps her influence is decreasing the further away he gets. He is still tethered to the mothership, though, although this connection becomes more and more tenuous as he climbs the ladder to the loft, until it reaches breaking point where something has to give. This short three-syllable line, which stops almost as soon as it begins, pulls the rhythm up abruptly and communicates pressure, tension, and a crisis point where someone or something has to immediately give way. This tension can also be felt in the first three lines of this stanza, not having any type of rhyme to bind them together. His mother is desperate to hold on until the very last, though, as her fingertips still pinch the last 1/100th of an inch. This is a minute amount, and indicates her desperation and sheer determination to keep holding on. The sibilant internal single rhyme of pinch with inch highlights the tightness of her grip. The ellipsis is ambiguous and could suggest a number of things. Do his mother's fingertips finally lose their grip on the tape measure, and as they do, her metaphorical hold on him slips away? Or does she maintain the tiniest connection with him? The final lines recount the poet reaching towards a hatch that opens on an endless sky. Note the consonants of reach and hatch, which picks up the ch sound at the end of pinch and inch, adding to the poem's sense of cohesion. He has found a skylight in the roof and opens it. The endless sky that he can see perhaps symbolises the endless possibilities ahead of him in his future. The use of the word hatch to refer to the skylight, with its connotations of baby birds breaking out of their eggshells, sets up the final image, to fall or fly. He is about to leave the nest, and one of two opposite outcomes awaits him, the starkness of which is emphasised, not only by alliteration, but also by the short, four-syllable line which has a single rhyme with the previous line. Will he fail, or will he succeed? As remarked at the beginning, Armitage does not stick to the formal conventions of a sonnet. The fact that there are 15 lines rather than 14 is not because he can't count. The choice to have an extra line is a deliberate one, so we need to think about what he is trying to communicate with this. If we look at the 15th line, which is effectively outside the form, we can see that it refers to a future which has not yet happened and which is, therefore, outside of the narrative of this episode, and is perhaps a subject for future sonnets. Thanks for watching. I'd really appreciate any questions or comments below. I look forward to hearing from you.